I mean, no one, I mean, least of all her, ever expected it to run for any length of time. I think she sort of gave it 8 months or something. But these things, once they keep going, I suppose, do go forever. And I mean, I think now, particularly having survived the whole COVID scare, it will go forever.
Why did your great-grandmother not think it was going to last? Did she not think it was very good?
No, I don't think it's, I mean, plays don't tend to, that's what they do. They have a period in the West End and then they go and rest somewhere else and carry on. So it wasn't she didn't have an issue with it. It's just that was the rhythm of the play world.
And how do we account then for the fact that it not lasting 8 months, it's lasted 70 years and goes on?
Well, I mean, despite rumours to the contrary, I think one of the factors is actually it is a good play. It is actually a very, very clever murder mystery in a very classic way. One of the other things that I think, someone explained to me the other day is one of the reasons it lasted the early bits was that it started off in a very small theatre. And when you have a popular play in a small theatre, you increase demand. And there was this phenomenon in the kind of early 1950s, well, I mean, particularly in the sort of early days of the Mousetrap queue. And there was, for instance, a man who earned his living lending stools to people so they could sit down in the Mousetrap queue. And I think that whole thing, the idea of demand, but also the fact that people couldn't get tickets when they wanted to, so they had to delay, and that kept the thing going. And as I sort of said earlier, once you've got that momentum and once it keeps going, you just keep going, and then there's no reason to close.
Is the play performed today as written? Has it been in any way updated?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think they've changed a thing, to the extent that actually part of the set is still the same as it was in 1952 as well. So no, it's very much the same production. I mean, obviously cast members have changed, but not very much else.
The rights for this play were given by Agatha Christie to your father, is that right?
Correct. They were given for his 8th birthday, or 8th or 9th birthday, I think. I'm not sure it's exactly what he wanted at the time. And I'm not sure she thought it was that big a gift. I mean, I think she did, there are a few books that she gave to people and that kind of thing. It was, I mean, a very nice thing to do, but I don't think she thought it was very much more than that. And then obviously it became the phenomenon it was, and perhaps she regretted it. I don't know.
I suppose it may be, talking of records, one of the largest birthday presents.
Might be up there.
Yeah. When did you first become aware that your great-grandmother was a phenomenon?
I think I could put a specific date on it, which is probably the day of her death. I was about probably nearly 6, and I came home from school and I realised something was up. My father was sitting in a dark room, very, very sad. And I remember watching the 6 o'clock news, and her death was the lead item on the 6 o'clock news. And I think even then I realised that was something special. I mean, obviously, growing up, we spent quite a lot of time with her. But I'm not sure, I mean, whilst there was always a sense of her being something special because people behaved probably quite different around her. But as a small boy, I behaved different around her because she was old. I think that moment of her death made me realise quite what a phenomenon she was, and that probably was the moment.
In terms of the number of copies that she's sold, I believe Agatha Christie is outdone only by the Bible and William Shakespeare.
The most published novelist of all time.
Yes.
And that's not just British novelist, it's not just female novelist. I mean, I think she doesn't get credit for being a woman in the way that she should. I think that's quite an interesting phenomenon, that the best-selling novelist of all time was a woman born in Torquay in 1890. We think she sold more than 2 billion books. In fact, that's a statistic that maybe we should update at some time because it seems to have been that way for a long time. But we still sell a phenomenal number of books. I mean, I think we probably think we sell, slightly depending on what you think a book is these days, around 4 million books a year globally. In all languages. I mean, I think she's published in almost 100 languages now. It's still a phenomenon, and it's still, she still sells a lot of books. I mean, one of the phenomenal things during lockdown, at a time when, Amazon deprioritized books, bookshops were closed, our book sales went through the roof, in a slightly odd way. But it's still a phenomenon.
Do you know how she got going? I understand that she read and admired Wilkie Collins and Arthur Conan Doyle.
She never went to school. She taught herself to read because her mother didn't think she should learn to read, so she did it herself. And she lived quite a solitary childhood. She had 2 older siblings, and I think she probably spent a lot of time internally playing with things in her head. And she started writing stories at a very young age, and just played with writing stories. And then later, her sister, who also actually had a book published and plays put on in the West End, bet her that she couldn't write a detective story. And that's a bet that I think she comprehensively won.
Do you see it as part of your role to defend her memory? I mean, I think in particular of, the most controversial moment of her life where she disappears for some days in the 1920s, about which books have been written. Do you feel a need to kind of defend Agatha Christie against what might be alleged about that period and that disappearance?
I don't feel any. Very rarely do I feel a sense of aggression, particularly about that act. I think most people recognise that she had a breakdown of some sort. I mean, she was going through a very traumatic time. Her mother had died. Her husband was leaving her. She had a small child. Despite what people think, because obviously she did become wealthy, she wasn't wealthy at the time. Money would have been an issue, and that whole thing, I can imagine that. So I don't find my need to defend her there. I find my need, if I have to defend her, it's to defend her. The British have this, we do have this tall poppy syndrome, and I do find it fascinating sometimes how little credit she is given for what she has achieved, what she achieved as a woman writer at the beginning of the 20th century, all the way through the 20th century.
You want to defend her as a writer of quality?
Yeah, and I mean, but just as a writer of popularity, I mean, there is nothing wrong with writing books that people want to read. Some people might say that's the whole point, and I would be one of them. I think, but also, what she did for the crime genre. You speak to most crime writers now, you speak to your Val McDermids and those kind of people, and they will tell you that she is the basis of it all. She helped define the genre. That generation helped define the genre, and she was at the heart of that.
And I don't want to dwell on it too much, but just in case some viewers don't know, so in 1928 or thereabouts, 1926 was it, her car is found abandoned. She has disappeared. There's an enormous hunt for her involving policemen and volunteers, as you would imagine. And she turns up not long after, actually in a Harrogate hotel, where she's been seen dancing. And by then, the things got rather out of hand because some police actually suspect Archie, her husband, of having done her in. But it also seems she's left some clues. Do you think she left clues? Was this, in a way, an Agatha Christie plot?
No. I think whatever happened. No one will ever... Well, I do occasionally have this idea that maybe there's an envelope that'll be passed down through the family, and will come to me or one of my sisters in due course. But I think probably that's not the case.
Do you have favourites amongst the books?
Someone once asked me what the best written Agatha Christie is, and my answer to that is A Murder is Announced. I think that's the other thing that... I mean, I learned this quite a lot from Sarah Phelps, who did a lot of our BBC adaptations, and she was adamant. She was very clear on the fact that the books were written about the time that they were written in. So, people think there is an Agatha Christie time, and probably in their heads that's sometime in the late 20s or early 30s. Well, A Murder is Announced is a novel about 1950s Britain. It's a novel about post-war Britain. It's about a particular type of post-war Britain. But I think it's as well as a great story and one of the best setups that she had, it is also a great exploration of 1950s Britain, and I think that's an element of her work that is actually underestimated.
And a favourite character, might it be Miss Marple or might it be Hercule Poirot? I'm
actually going to go slightly different from that, because one of my other favourite works is actually the play Witness for the Prosecution, which your viewers should go and see at London County Hall, because it's both an amazing production but also an amazing space to go and watch a play in. It's the old debating chamber of the London County Council. And I think Romaine, who is the central character, or at least one of the central characters of that, is one of her more interesting and intriguing characters. So I'm going to go a little bit left field and not pick between Poirot and Marple.
James, thank you for the recommendation, and thank you for your hospitality here at Agatha Christie Limited.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.